Alright everybody, it's going to be a video on how to diagnose TPMS faults on a couple different Toyotas. So first step, I'm going to verify the customer concern, and that wasn't very hard to do. I do have that TPMS light on there. It's been on even while it's running. So that is the basic system. It's a little bit of an older one. I'll show you what it'll look like if it's a newer system. We got it on this newer Avalon here. What that would more look like is this system here. This one's actually working, but this the higher line system is able to tell you tire pressure and position live, whereas the older system just gives you the warning light. So if you're trying to diagnose this system, in a way it's easier because one of the positions will probably just read like a dash dash, or you know, a really odd number. So that'll give you a good idea as to what sensor or how many sensors. Although this system, you can't trust 100% that the position is right. So you'd really do the diagnosis just like we're going to do on this system here. And so I'll run you through. We verified the concern. The next step, logically, we've got key on, engine off. I've hooked up the Techstream already to help us out, and I'm going to start up the Techstream program. Get you guys nice and close in here. Logically, we'll connect to the vehicle. And you could do this with a universal scan tool as well. This does not have smart key, and it's a normal vehicle, so we'll jump in there. Now there's a couple ways that you could proceed. If you're in the dealership, you probably do health check on any vehicle that you ever work on, but in this case I'm going to just go directly to the TPMS system, and I'm only really going to look at that. I'm not worried about any other systems. And so here we are. Here are options. We're going to go to tire pressure monitor. That's a single click, but if I double click, it'll go ahead and initiate communication with that one. And we've got a DTC here, a C2126. Now, if you were on your own and you weren't sure what to do, you could put this into TIS, but I can basically tell you it's a transmitter ID not received. So there's something going on with that TPMS sensor. Now, this system doesn't know if it's the left front or the right front. It just knows one of the four transmitters are not communicating. So my recommendation on this is to go ahead and jump to the data list, and then at this point, oh, there you go. You'll notice here it shows our TPMS ID codes, and that's the actual transmitter's identification number. Then below, you'll notice ID number 1 through 4 and their PSI. You'll notice that number 1 is reading an NA. Additionally, down here, you can see they're all reading reasonable temperatures except for that ID number 1. So it would really appear that our ID number 1 sensor is either defective, whether it's, you know, failed, or the internal battery has died, or possibly it's just not programmed correctly. So regardless, we're going to need to verify a couple of things. First thing, real basic, I wanted to point out, I drug a wheel over here. If you are looking at this problem and you notice the TPMS sensor really looks more like a valve stem, and they may have recently had tires installed, it's likely because they broke the TPMS sensor and they just went ahead and put a rubber valve stem in. So compare that to this one. You know, that'd be a normal TPMS sensor. So if you go ahead and just do your visual inspection, it should be to see if you have what appears to be 4 TPMS sensors. Now, the one that looks like rubber here, they do have TPMS sensors that look like this. So this isn't 100% guarantee, but this one's especially flimsy. They do make black rubber ones that are kind of stiff, and they are actually TPMS sensors. And so right off the bat, I'm gonna really suspect that we've got a problem here, but I rolled this one over really just for you to see the difference. I've got the normal one still installed here, and so our next step is really going to be to determine which sensor is the issue. So you'll notice on those ID codes, we can pull the number off there, but we'd have to physically take the tire apart, you know, and access the sensor to pull the numbers off it. So there's another way. This is a TPMS tool from ATEQ. Most shops are going to have something similar to this. This is what it looks like here. I'm going to power this on, and I'll go ahead and I'll keep you where you can see the screen really well here. So all I really want to do right now is check tire pressure monitor. So that's what we are on right here. Click on that. Do a manual input of the year. It's a Toyota Camry. This one's older. It's a 2011. And the difference between a 4-wheel and a 5-wheel is that on some trucks or SUVs, they may have the fifth sensor monitor. It's like that FJ Cruiser over there. They may have a full-size spare with a TPMS sensor in that actual spare tire, but this one definitely doesn't. This is just a 4-channel. So we're going to pick 4 wheels. And of course, this is with a TPMS failure. It would make sense logically if you just see that light illuminated, you know, you may just want to check the tire pressure. But once we get driving this vehicle, that TPMS light is flashing, and that's kind of what indicated there's an actual TPMS problem. And so I've got this reader fired up here, and what I'm basically going to do, I'm going to start with the left front, and we put it near the sensor. In this case, we realize it's just a valve stem has been put in there, and we would initiate reading that sensor. You notice it's triggering it, it's waiting to hear back, still processing, and it's not looking good. So that would kind of make sense, right? Now let's go here. Actually, what we want to do, we want to go the right front. That way we just keep it in order. You could go in any order you want, but just because it goes top to bottom, we'll jump to the right front. So it would be passenger side front. I'm going to press that button again. We just keep it near the sensor here. Okay. So we got a sensor reading out of that one. Let's verify this one here. We got a reading of that one. You'll notice it does show the PSI, it does show the temperature, and it does show the battery conditions as well. So we'll keep it rolling, and we'll try this one here. Okay, so as you can see, we've got 3 of them reading just fine. We've got one not reading. Now that may be due to some trickery here, but go ahead and let's just assume that was the correct wheel for the vehicle. So our next step is going to be, based on those numbers, what I'd like to do is compare those. And so I'm looking on there, the first number we got here, 3431,645, and I do see that as a registered sensor. And so the next one that I see here, 9CFB642. Actually, yep, 9CFB642. We do have that one right in the middle. Then the next one, 7D21645. Ooh, that's interesting. That one has 1 digit off. Now, if you have 1 digit off, that means that it's been not programmed correctly. So if you do see 1 digit off here, that's a pretty simple fix. We would just go in and do the reprogram. So I wanted to point that out. This one possibly what would have happened with this is the original sensor ID, and then maybe someone replaced a sensor, but they didn't have the ability to program it. So you're going on here and retrieving these numbers. So if the number doesn't match, that's because it's not been programmed. So two things, whether it's a number that doesn't match or whether it's no sensor detected, we would determine, does it need a new sensor? And in this case of this upper one here, 8754-12B3, is that number? 8751-2B3. One more time. Just trying to get it to focus on there. Okay. 875-12B3. Nowhere found. So we've got basically a sensor that's programmed that's not functioning. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to diagnose two issues in this particular vehicle. One being this sensor here, ID number 1, is defective. That sensor is defective, which we confirmed here. It won't even communicate with the sensor. There's no sensor detected. It's not working. The second issue with this vehicle is ID number 4 actually has to be programmed. So this sensor has possibly been changed before. So either way, the first step is to go ahead and sell the customer that one TPMS sensor, in this case ID number 1, which we determined is the left front. And so we're going to go ahead and sell that customer that part. And so we'll jump over there, the tire machine. I'll show you how to change one of those. Alright, I've got the Camry wheel here. I've got our new TPMS sensor, and I'm going to show you guys how to do the quickest change. So first we're going to let the air out. It's kind of obvious. I mean, this is really not that different from just changing a tire, but this will be a slightly quicker way. So once the air is out, this particular machine uses these rollers. Some machines have the shovel. The shovel's pretty nice, but what we're going to do is we're going to just break this upper bead so that the wheel and tire don't change their orientation, so that we don't really have to do a balance because we're not going to have changed anything. So I'm going to go ahead, drop this down. Now on this type, we need to kind of run in a circle. That's how we break the bead on this style. Alright, and I've just got the upper bead broken, so I'm going to roll it right to about here, as you guys can see. Maybe just a hair closer, just a little too far there. Alright, I'm going to go with that. I'm going to bump this down, making sure that I don't catch the sensor, because you can't hit the sensor. You hit the sensor's not going to survive. So you'll notice it's close, but it's not hitting. Next step, I free my hands up here, and basically I'm going to loosen that sensor up, put my hand back in there, and so basically there's a couple little parts to watch out for. As we loosen that nut, notice there is a washer in here, so as I drop the sensor down, I need to make sure that we don't lose that washer. Okay, that washer is important, so I'm going to cheat with the sensor to kind of grab it, get it out of there. So we've got sensor, washer, nut. This nut does have a torque spec. You know, a lot of times we snug them up, but it does actually have a torque spec. The other thing to note, this sensor has a rubber seal here, and so we want to be kind of delicate. I like to put a little bit of the tire lubricant on there. And so we've got the sensor out. Now, interestingly enough, I wrote down the old sensor number that was programmed, and looking right there, 875-12B3, that was the sensor that was programmed to the vehicle. So this sensor wasn't incorrectly programmed, although one of the other ones is. This was that ID number 1. this sensor is just defective. Now, it may be because it's internal battery, but we don't change the internal battery. There's no real way to change the internal battery. It's sealed up. And so we're just basically going to replace the sensor. And so I'm going to go ahead. I got my new sensor here, and I'm going to get out of the box here. And we've got all of our new stuff. Now with this sensor, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a little bit of a tire lubricant, which I'm going to steal from here. I'm just going to have a little bit on there. Just going to put a little tiny bit of lubricant on. I'm going to slide the sensor in. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure I get the washer on there correctly and the nut. And this is where you look up that torque spec, because this is really a demo on the technical aspects of it. I'm going to go ahead and just snug it up by feel. If you break it, it's your fault. If you don't tighten it enough and it leaks, it's your fault. This is just a demo for that. I'm going to release this part outside, get that out of the way. Now you'll notice the bead is broken still, but this tire never moved, so that's how we're going to not have to balance it. I'm going to go ahead and air this up. And once I get this thing aired up, I'll meet you back at the car. Alright, so I'm here back at the car. Wheels back on. It is torqued. New TPMS sensors in. What I also did that I forgot to mention was I wrote down the new TPMS sensor ID number on the new sensor that was out of the box. And so the next step I'm going to do in here is I'm going to go to the utility. Okay, so I clicked utility here, and then I need to go to ID registration. Okay, and I'm going to click the next button down here. Could have double clicked as well. And so welcome to the registration. It's just letting us know this is how we're going to reprogram the sensors. It's going to make us reprogram all 4 sensors. And so we're going to go ahead and go with next. Now at this point, you know, there's a couple things that we could do. One, you could go ahead around with this tool and you could pull all 4 of the numbers, and that would make sense. The other thing that we could do is, before we do this, we, right off the get-go, we could have actually went to the data list. Let's exit here. And yes, we're going to exit. And this is where you would have possibly went to the data list, and you could have copy and pasted these sensor ID numbers, right? And so one cool way you could do that is on typical Techstream, you can press Windows and then SN, and it'll pull up the snipping tool. So you get that snipping tool, and we could go ahead and just snip those ID numbers, so that way you don't have to go around and pull all the different numbers using the tool. We would just go ahead and we would input 3 of these numbers that are correct, and then input the new number on top. So that's kind of a neat trick, but I'm going to do it the long and difficult way. I'm going to go ahead and pull all the ID codes again, right? So there's a little bit of time savings for you there. And so starting with the left front, I'm going to go ahead and trigger that sensor. Now once in a while it doesn't read the first time, but that one did. See, that's our new number, and just for reference, that is in fact the number that I pulled off of the sensor. So I'm good with that. We'll go ahead to all the other 3 wheels. I'm going to go and retrieve them all. Now without this tool, like I said, you would need to disassemble and pull the identification numbers off of each sensor, which that's not practical, and that's why I suggest you take a note in live data. See, this one actually didn't read. We're going to try it again. Okay, it read that time. So if you didn't have this tool, it would make a lot of sense to pre-copy the ID numbers before you start. That way you at least have, you know, 3 of the ID numbers correct, and the one bad one you would just write in there. But with this tool, shoot, not even worth it. This tool's great and it's fast. So now officially we've got all 4 sensor IDs. And so like I had stated, right, we're going to jump into utility here, and we'll go into the utility. Once again, we'll go to that ID registration now that we have all 4 numbers, and we're just going to pull them right off the screen. So go ahead and do next. We have 5 minutes to do it. So first number, okay, 7D10645, and I've just been typing right in this box. Input is a way to type it with keypad, but this is a pain, so I don't really use that one. So I'm just gonna just do OK. I just kind of stay away from that one if I can. So once you have that one, you go ahead and press next to do the next one. That second sensor, 3431645. As you can see, I've been typing it here. The next 2 I'm going to keep you right on this screen, and I'm just going to read them off of the ATEQ tool. It is, go right up here, click, I'm typing right on the keyboard, 9CFB 642, next, and then last but not least, 7D21645, next, and the ID registration is complete. So I exit it. Now these should all have working sensors. That sensor was defective. Another sensor in the back was improperly programmed. So the way that you verify it, we'll go ahead, I'll turn the key off. I'll turn the key on, and it actually seems to work better if you run it. You'll probably just do key on, but I like to run it, leave it running. You'll see we've got a light flashing here, but what I really want to do is I'm just going to exit the TPMS wizard. I'm going to just totally get out of this screen right here. Matter of fact, I'm just going to go ahead and close Techstream altogether. So I'm going to close Techstream. I'm going to disconnect. And I'm going to leave this running for just a bit while it initiates communication. Actually, while it was doing it right there, I mean, it only took a minute. You can see TPMS light out. So we're pretty happy. It may make sense to do a road test. Another note, sometimes the sensors come shipped kind of in a sleep mode, and so you may actually have to do a road test above 15 miles an hour or so to wake it up to even initiate programming. But I'm going to say this vehicle, I would verify after a road test it's fixed. I would write it up. One new TPMS sensor based on a defective left front, and then I believe it was a left rear that was improperly programmed. It had previously been replaced and not programmed. And so there you go, TPMS 101.